Under the shadow of Kensington Palace, a black-suited courier arrived flanked by Spanish royal security, carrying a velvet case worth $10 million. Inside, a diamond choker, emerald tiara, and rare Andalusian brooch, once worn by Queen Victoria Eugenie. The note was signed simply FBI, Felipe VI, King of Spain. But instead of awe, Princess Catherine's reaction was silence. Then 4 quiet words: "Return it unopened." Hours later in Madrid, Felipe VI sat alone in his office, eyes wet, his boldest gesture rejected, and a centuries-old royal connection suddenly thrown into doubt. The shocking delivery. It was just after 10 o'clock a.m. when an unmarked van, escorted by 2 black SUVs bearing Spanish royal security, pulled into the gates of Kensington Palace. A single courier in a dark suit stepped out, cradling a long velvet-lined case. Royal aides were already waiting. The delivery was signed for under the code name Aurelia, a detail that would later intrigue royal watchers. Without a word, the courier handed over the case and disappeared back into the van. Inside, wrapped in layers of silk, were 3 breathtaking pieces: an opulent diamond choker with stones the size of marbles, an emerald tiara glistening even in the palace's dim light, and a rare Andalusian brooch once said to have been worn by Queen Victoria Eugenie in 1920. The combined value, according to insurance documents, was over $10 million, an amount that made even seasoned royal staff pause. Nestled among the jewels was a cream envelope, sealed with crimson wax stamped FBI. The note inside read, "To the future of Europe's crown, may your light never dim. FBI." The initials left no doubt. Felipe VI, King of Spain. The words were poetic, but also personal, hinting at a relationship deeper than mere diplomatic courtesy. When Catherine entered the room, aides say she froze. For over a full minute, she stood silently, eyes on the jewels but unmoving. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she instructed her staff, "Return it unopened." Those 4 words set off a chain reaction neither palace could have anticipated, one that would spill into headlines within hours. The velvet case was carried away as discreetly as it had arrived, but the ripple was already in motion. While Kensington aides debated how to word their return letter, the news reached Madrid. Inside the walls of Zarzuela Palace, the gift had been weeks in planning, meant as a gesture of goodwill, and perhaps more. But for King Felipe VI, the rejection was not just a political setback. It was personal, and behind closed doors, the Spanish monarch's composure began to crack. Felipe's emotional collapse behind palace walls. In Madrid, word of Catherine's refusal reached King Felipe VI within the hour. Witnesses say the king, normally the image of restraint, sat motionless at his desk for several minutes after hearing the news. Then, quietly, his eyes filled with tears. For a monarch raised to suppress public emotion, the moment was a rare breach in the armor. Staff moved quickly, clearing his calendar for the afternoon. State meetings were postponed, calls rescheduled. The king was in no condition to perform duties. In the royal apartments, Queen Letizia received the news with markedly less sentiment. One aide described her as stone-faced, listening in silence before warning Felipe not to embarrass the crown again. Whether she saw the gift as misguided or politically dangerous, she made it clear she had not supported the gesture. Her private skepticism toward the British royals was no secret. But in this moment, her words were more than caution. They were a reprimand. This was not the first attempt. Insiders confirmed that Felipe had made 2 previous gestures toward the Prince and Princess of Wales in recent years, both rejected under the veil of diplomatic courtesy. This $10 million gift had been his boldest move yet, a gamble to open a warmer chapter between the two houses. Now, it was the third strike. Later that evening, leaked audio from a private corridor in Zarzuela Palace would make its way to the Spanish press. In it, Felipe could be heard telling a confidant, "I only ever wanted a bond beyond duty." It was the confession of a man whose outreach had been met not with hostility, but with silence. And silence, in royal terms, can be louder than words. The emotional collapse in Madrid stayed behind palace walls, but its cause was already sparking speculation in London. Why had Catherine reacted so decisively? Why reject something so valuable without even examining it? While the public saw a polite diplomatic refusal, those closest to Catherine knew the truth ran deeper. The rejection wasn't about politics or protocol. It was about principles, and about drawing a line that even the most dazzling diamonds could not cross. Catherine's hidden message. In the days following the delivery, those close to Princess Catherine began to share whispers of her real reasoning. Speaking privately to Princess Anne, Catherine reportedly called the jewels a bribe to rewrite memory. It was a striking phrase, one that revealed the emotional undercurrent of her decision. To Catherine, the gift was not simply extravagant. It was an intrusion, wrapped in velvet and history, carrying a weight she had no wish to bear. Her protectiveness over Princess Diana's jewelry legacy is well known within royal circles. The sapphire engagement ring, the pearl drop earrings, each piece carries a story of personal connection. Accepting Felipe's gift, Catherine feared, would open the door to obligations she had not agreed to and might dilute the emotional purity of Diana's treasures. To her, the gesture was less about friendship and more about claiming a stake in her narrative. Insiders say Catherine's focus at the time was elsewhere entirely. She had been working quietly to secure a visit from Princess Atierne Adna Mayeba, the humanitarian royal of West Africa known as the Queen of the Soil. Mayeba's work in maternal health had long inspired Catherine, and their potential collaboration promised real impact, the kind that no jewel could match. By rejecting Felipe's opulent offering, Catherine was making a deliberate statement about the kind of royal she intended to be. Modern royalty, in her view, should be dignified, modest, and emotionally sincere, not dazzled by relics of a diplomatic past. The message was subtle, but for those paying attention, it was impossible to miss. Her loyalty was to legacy, not luxury. The Ghost of Diana. The three-piece set Felipe sent was no ordinary treasure. Its diamond choker, emerald tiara, and Andalusian brooch had belonged to Queen Ina, also known as Victoria Eugenie of Battenberg, who reigned as Spain's queen consort from 1906 to 1931. But their history stretched into British memory in an unexpected way. In 1987, during an official visit to Madrid, these same jewels were quietly offered to Princess Diana. Diana, still the Princess of Wales, had declined. Her words, recalled by a Spanish courtier decades later, were diplomatic but firm. Too heavy a history for too fragile a future. Those in her circle knew exactly what she meant. The jewels were wrapped in the politics of exile, scandal, and whispered family feuds. Accepting them would have meant aligning herself with the very traditions she was beginning to reject. Catherine's decision to send them back in 2025 was almost a mirror of Diana's choice nearly 40 years earlier. It wasn't about snubbing Felipe personally. It was about protecting a vision of royalty unshackled from transactional diplomacy. Just as Diana had once done, Catherine put sentiment before status and principle before protocol. To some, it was an act of quiet defiance. To others, it was a reaffirmation of her alignment with Diana's values. Either way, to signal that Catherine was uninterested in reviving the old codes of royal gift-giving, especially when those gifts carried the weight of someone else's unfinished story. If Catherine's decision echoed Diana's spirit, it also cast a long shadow over relations with Queen Letizia. The Spanish queen, already known for her cool professionalism, did not take well to being publicly connected with a failed overture. For years, comparisons to Catherine and to Diana had fueled a quiet rivalry in the European press. This latest rejection didn't just bruise Spanish pride, it risked opening old wounds. And Letizia, unlike Felipe, had no interest in hiding her displeasure. Letizia's growing resentment toward the House of Wales. Sources inside Zarzuela Palace say that when Queen Letizia heard of Catherine's rejection, her response was blunt. She allegedly called the incident predictable and warned Philippe that it would feed London's arrogance. Letizia has long been skeptical of Britain's royal machine, describing it privately as a global PR juggernaut that thrives on image rather than substance. Her resentment isn't new. In 2023, Spanish gossip columns reported that Letizia had referred to Catherine as a walking porcelain PR campaign during a private reception in Barcelona. The remark was quickly denied by palace spokespeople, but it aligned with the Queen's well-documented discomfort at constant comparisons to Diana and Kate, two women who dominate public affection in ways Letizia has never matched. Whether she initiated the idea of sending the $10 million set is disputed. Some insiders claim she pushed Philippe toward the gesture as a diplomatic olive branch. Others insist she opposed it from the start, knowing the potential for public embarrassment. Either way, Catherine's refusal left Letizia in a difficult position, publicly linked to a gift that was returned, unopened. In the fragile hierarchy of royal diplomacy, such moments leave scars. And for Letizia, whose popularity in Spain has at times dipped below 50%, this incident may have further strained the already cool ties between the Spanish and British royal courts. While Letizia dealt with the optics, another layer of the story began to surface, one that made Catherine's instinctive rejection look almost prophetic. The jewels themselves had a history far darker than their polished surfaces suggested. Whispers of scandal, exile, and even superstition had followed them through the decades. And if the tales were to be believed, this was not just a case of declining a gift. It was sidestepping a curse that had haunted the Spanish crown for nearly a century. The jewelry's origin story. The diamond choker, emerald tiara, and Andalusian brooch all trace back to Queen Ina, who fled Spain in 1931 after the fall of the monarchy during the Spanish Civil War. She carried the jewels with her into exile, and over the decades, they became wrapped in legend. Spanish courtiers whispered about the cursed diamond at the choker's center, linking it to a string of misfortunes: 3 miscarriages in the royal family, 2 sudden deaths, and the exile of a crown prince. In the 1970s, King Juan Carlos, Felipe's father, reportedly ordered the jewels locked away after a social scandal erupted when they were worn at a private gala. The story went that the wearer fell ill within days, sparking renewed belief in the curse. The jewels remained unseen for decades, gathering dust in a vault beneath the palace. Felipe, determined to modernize the monarchy, had them secretly restored in 2024. The emerald tiara's frame was rebuilt, the choker's clasp reset with platinum, and the brooch polished to a mirror shine. But in doing so, he quietly defied his father's long-standing warning. These stones carry more than weight. They carry memory. When Catherine refused them, some in Madrid said she had simply shown good taste. Others whispered that she had listened to her intuition and avoided inheriting the burden the jewels carried. Either way, the velvet case was returned across the channel, and the legend of the curse lived on, unclaimed. The African princess Catherine chose instead. While the velvet case was quietly flown back to Madrid, Catherine's attention was fixed thousands of miles away, on Princess Atierne Adna Mayeba of West Africa. Known as the Queen of the Soil, Mayeba had built an international reputation for her hands-on humanitarian work in maternal health, food sustainability, and rural education. Catherine had followed her initiatives since at least 2018, studying reports and arranging discreet phone calls to discuss shared causes. Sources close to Kensington Palace confirmed that Catherine had been working for over a year to secure Mayeba's first official visit to the United Kingdom. Several European courts had extended invitations, including Belgium and Sweden, but Mayeba had declined them all, citing a desire to partner only with initiatives that offered tangible, on-the-ground impact. Catherine's maternal health programs, launched in 2020, fit that standard perfectly. The timing of the Spanish gift, arriving just as negotiations with Mayeba were reaching a delicate phase, was impossible to ignore. Accepting a $10 million set of European royal jewels could have undermined the sincerity of Catherine's approach to Mayeba, whose public image is grounded in rejecting excess and focusing on grassroots change. By sending the jewels back, Catherine not only avoided a diplomatic entanglement, she signaled her alignment with the kind of royal relationships she wanted for the future. For her, building a bridge to a monarch like Mayeba carried more value than any diamond, and far more promise for the kind of legacy she hoped to leave. If Catherine's pivot toward Mayeba impressed humanitarian circles, it infuriated Spain's tabloid press. What had begun as whispers of a returned gift exploded into a national talking point. For Spanish commentators, this wasn't about African diplomacy or modern values. It was about humiliation. And within days, the headlines turned sharp, casting Catherine not as a principled modern royal, but as the woman who had snubbed their king in the most glittering way possible. Spanish media's backlash. On Madrid's Gran Via, newsstands sold out of papers bearing screaming headlines. Felipe rejected, again, Kate's cold crown. The popular magazine, Hola, ran a 2-page spread showing the jewels in detail beside a photo of Catherine at a charity gala. With the caption, "Too good for Spain?" It was a framing that quickly stoked public outrage. Prominent Spanish TV commentator Ana Maria Mendiola accused the British royals of arrogance dressed as grace, telling viewers that the House of Windsor still behaved as though continental monarchies existed in its shadow. On social media, Spanish users traded hashtags like #CrownSnub and #KateFria, while British accounts fired back with memes and reminders of past Spanish scandals. The backlash wasn't just tabloid noise. Editorials in respected papers like El País questioned whether Britain truly saw Spain as an equal partner in royal diplomacy. The refusal, they argued, was not just Catherine's choice. It was a reflection of the Windsors' enduring sense of superiority, one that had gone largely unchallenged in European royal relations. By the end of the week, what had been a private exchange between two royal households had become a cultural debate, one that revived centuries-old tensions between the British and Spanish crowns. Amid the storm, one figure inside the British royal family stood firmly behind Catherine. And it wasn't the Queen. Prince William had known about the gift before it ever crossed the Channel. He had let it come, and he had let Catherine send it back. But his reasons were layered, a mix of trust in his wife's judgment, lingering caution toward King Philippe, and an unshakable instinct to protect Catherine's space from anything that might compromise her integrity. William's quiet role. According to Kensington Palace insiders, Prince William was informed of King Felipe's plan to send the jewels nearly 2 weeks before their arrival on January 15, 2025. He did not attempt to block the delivery, reportedly telling an aide, "Let her decide. She knows her mind." Those close to him say it was a deliberate choice, a quiet affirmation of Catherine's independence in handling matters that could affect her public role. When the decision came to return the set, William's only private comment to Catherine was simple: "You handled it with the strength of a queen." It was not just marital support, it was a recognition that her refusal had drawn a clear boundary between personal dignity and political theater. Tension between William and Philippe dates back to the 2019 UN Climate Summit in New York, where Felipe reportedly made a pointed joke about Brexit in front of other leaders. Since then, William has approached their interactions with polite caution, avoiding unnecessary entanglements that could complicate future diplomacy. In standing behind Catherine's rejection, William also sent an unspoken message to Madrid. The Waleses would not be swayed by grandeur, nor by the old royal habit of buying goodwill with gemstones. By the time the jewels had been returned and the media frenzy subsided, the moment had already reshaped Catherine's image. For some, it was a snub. For others, it was a defining act of grace under pressure. Either way, it marked a quiet turning point in how Europe's royal houses viewed the future Queen of England. The final chapter of the saga would not be written in diamonds, but in a shift of perception, from the currency of gold to the currency of respect. A new era. The Velvet Case's journey back to Madrid closed one chapter, but opened another. Catherine's refusal was read across Europe as a declaration that the next generation of the British monarchy would not play by the old rules. In an era where optics can outweigh opulence, her choice positioned her as a royal defined by values, not valuables. For King Philippe VI, the heartbreak was personal. But for other monarchies, it was a cautionary tale. Access to the House of Wales could not be secured with heirlooms, no matter their beauty or history. The rejection's symbolism rippled quietly through diplomatic circles, prompting a reassessment of how to approach Britain's future sovereigns. Inside Britain, Catherine's standing only grew. Polling conducted in February 2025 showed her public approval at 78%, a 6-point rise since the start of the year. Commentators noted that she had managed to navigate a politically sensitive situation without public confrontation, yet still make her stance unmistakably clear. The jewels were gone, but the message remained. In this new era, the crown's power would not be measured in carats. For many, it felt like a passing of symbolic authority, from the glitter of gold to the grace of conviction. The Velvet Case never made it to Catherine's private chambers. Within 3 hours of its arrival at 10:00 a.m., it was repacked, resealed, and placed on a discreet return flight to Madrid. There were no public photographs, no palace statements, and no ceremonial handover. Yet somehow, by the next morning, every detail of the exchange was headline news. Not just in Britain, but across Europe. In Spain, the media framed the moment as a humiliation. Editorials in El País and ABC speculated whether this was the latest sign of a subtle cooling between the British and Spanish crowns. Social networks filled with hashtags like #CrownSnub and #KateFria, with Spanish commentators accusing the House of Windsor of arrogance. But inside Britain, the narrative was strikingly different. For royal supporters, Catherine's refusal wasn't rudeness, it was restraint, the mark of a woman who valued sincerity over spectacle. Privately, palace insiders say Prince William stood firmly by his wife. He had been informed about the intended gift nearly 2 weeks before it arrived, and made no move to intervene. "Let her decide," he told an aide. When the decision came, his words to Catherine were simple. "You handled it with the strength of a queen." That quiet endorsement was, in itself, a statement, one that signaled Catherine's authority in shaping the image and values of the future monarchy. The real heart of Catherine's decision lay in her priorities. In the same week the Spanish jewels arrived, she was finalizing arrangements for a potential visit from Princess Akhtern Adna Mayeba, the West African royal and humanitarian known for her maternal health initiatives. To Catherine, the choice between $10 million in jewels and the chance to build a bridge with a groundbreaking global leader was no choice at all. She chose values over valuables, a pivot that sent its own powerful message. And there was something else, the shadow of Princess Diana. The last time these jewels were quietly offered to a Princess of Wales was in 1987, when Diana visited Madrid. She too had declined, famously calling them too heavy a history for too fragile a future. By sending the case back unopened in 2025, Catherine was, knowingly or not, echoing Diana's words and reaffirming her loyalty to a vision of royalty built on humanity, not transaction. For King Philippe VI, the rejection cut deeper than protocol. Friends say his voice cracked when he confided to a trusted aide, "I only ever wanted a bond beyond duty." It was a rare glimpse of vulnerability from a monarch who has spent his reign balancing tradition with modern pressures. Yet his loss may prove to be Catherine's gain, reinforcing her as a figure who cannot be swayed by grandeur, and whose influence rests on authenticity. As the velvet case disappeared once again into the guarded vaults of Zarzuela Palace, its journey left an unmistakable mark. Catherine's decision was more than a refusal. It was a redefinition. In a world still dazzled by jewels and titles, she chose the currency of respect, and in doing so, she may have quietly shifted the balance of power in European royalty from the glitter of gold to the grace of conviction.